Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm excited to share the conversation that I have with Jacob from Macros First. Macros First, you probably know a lot of the big players in the macro space. Well, Macros First is soon to become one of them. They've created an incredible product. It's clean. The moment it's ad-free, and they just do an incredible job of helping you solve the correct question versus the question that most macro trackers solve. And you have to listen to the episode to find out what that is. But we have a closer relationship with Jacob and Macros First. We have a direct integration inside of Coach Catalyst, a two-way integration. We talk about that integration. We talk about going from idea to quitting your job and going all in Macros First. So if you're into business building, if you're into nutrition, if you're into macros, this is going to be your episode. Hope you enjoy this episode with Jacob from Macros First. Jacob, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Hey, thank you, Trevor. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I wish we were doing this at the Banya in San Francisco, but doing it in 190-degree weather, I don't know, or not weather, room, I don't know how podcast equipment holds up in that kind of environment.
Yeah, or the guest, so I guess it'd be a short podcast, but right to the point, a new take on hot ones. Right. I think there's something there. That'd be great. I think it'd be awesome. There should be like an extreme environment podcast series where it's just like in the ice bath, in the sauna.
Well, like, have you seen the Kevin Hart ones where Kevin Hart sits in an ice bath and he interviews other athletes and entertainers and that kind of stuff? And
so it's already been done.
Well, I don't know if the sauna one has been done though, but the ice bath one is actually kind of funny. So. All right, well, let's get to it. So for those of you that don't know, Macros First and Coach Catalyst, we actually have a partnership where we can pull in data from Macros First right into a coach's account for a client. And then we also have a two-way integration, meaning we can push data down. So if you change your targets for a client from a macronutrient standpoint, it pushes down to their Macros First app, which is really cool. I mean, these are two different applications that are talking to each other. And we've got a lot more that's kind of planned for the future. But we've never really talked about the backstory. We've been working with you guys for a while. And so this podcast is all about like the backstory and how the skyscraper got built, where most people see the business, they see the person as like what it is today. Like it's this live, breathing thing, maybe not as big as we want them to be, like at any point, right? But there was a lot that went into getting to a certain point, and I think it's fun to unpack those early days. And so let's start this one nice and easy. How did you come up with Macros First? Like, where did the name come from?
Oh, man. Yeah. So real reluctantly. Well, I should say this. The origin of Macros First was I just was tracking macros. So the year was 2016. I was a CrossFitter, fell into the paleo camp as a good, high-level local emphasis on local CrossFitter did. Got super shredded, but stopped being able to like lift anything heavy. I became like a local CrossFit box model or something. So I was like, paleo doesn't seem very sustainable. So I switched to a branded diet that was all about meal timing, macros, carb cycling against your training days. So I became, the guy going into the office with like my 6 Tupperware containers, always, tailored around, did I work out in the morning? Was it a lifting day or a running day? Was it a rest day? Or if I'm working out at night? It was crazy. But what was like blew my mind was like the hard part for me wasn't meal prepping. It wasn't, eating right. It wasn't doing all my food shopping. It was like to build these meals, to do this meal prepping, I was solving math problems like every meal, because it was like, okay, if my post-recovery first thing in the morning workout meal required 80 grams of carbs. Okay. My kitchen had Post-it notes all over the fridge. I had my math equations to figure out, okay, how much rice do I need to get the 80 carbs? And that, led me to, and by the way, I was like tracking, I was trying to use the popular tools at the time, like MyFitnessPal. There was another app that was called My Macros. But all of them, I still had the same problem, because these apps asked me, how much did you eat?
Right.
And as like a meal prepper, that wasn't the question I was trying to answer. I was trying to answer like, how much do I want to eat? How much rice do I want to eat to get such and such carbs? And so that led me to create this like the spreadsheet, a Google Doc that was a little solver. It was a little calculator of like, okay, select my food. It was like a little hand curated, coded database of like, foods I manually entered, and it let me, choose my input for any of the macros, protein, carbs, fat, as well as calories, and it would spit out the serving size. And that's where the name came from. This approach was putting the macros first.
Did you get it? Like, was it like right from the beginning? You're like, yep, macros first, that's it, or was there kind of like was there a bunch that you had?
There was one before this, and it's funny. It's like it's still alive in our like Google Play Store URL, and originally it was called PrepSmart, and because the idea was, as a meal prepper, I was I wanted to prep smartly, or a smart helper for meal prepping. But that sounded awkward. It sort of sounded like it's like a medical testing. Like it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Right. And also, I very quickly learned, it's just kind of a fun story, once the app became an app, that like meal prepping is a pretty small niche community in the broader scheme of like, nutrition tracking and nutrition, awareness. So I moved away from that and became macros first. Originally, like when I was kind of describing this approach, it was just part of the marketing copy. It was like, we're an app that puts macros first. And then it was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, this should be the name. It's not just this feature that I'm describing. It could be the whole thing. Because the other insight too at the time was these other apps. Like, I mean, MyFitnessPal never put macros first. Macros is like third, fourth, or fifth there, meaning it's like a paid upsell. Like, to get any of the features around like managing, tracking, prioritizing, reporting on macros, it ain't the first priority. It was like something that was added later. And, we were always built for macros from the get-go.
Right. Could you get the URL too?
Yeah, we're able to get the URL, and I think I bought PrepSmart.io or something like that too. I had both, and PrepSmart is still. I don't know how to change this. Maybe a listener can help out. But like in the Google Play App Store, at least, our URL path when you download the app is still like PrepSmart in there.
Is it?
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything I can do about that.
But, the evolution of companies is interesting. So Coach Catalyst used to be called Habit Catalyst. And so if you look deep into our archives, you can still see a lot of like Habit Catalyst type stuff, because we started in kind of the habit world. And so I don't know if I would have, if I was to rename Coach Catalyst. Catalyst is a hard word. It's a hard word to spell, and there's a lot of syllables, but you kind of roll with what you got. But that's the thing is like the word is important to us. Like, if it could be a better word, but I don't know if there's a better word than catalyst. It's kind of like, it's the thing that makes things go faster, right? And so
it just leads to change, and that's where habits need a catalyst. Like, I like it a lot. Whether it's hard to spell or not, sign that little Y.
Right, I'm always like CATALYST.
I'd recommend this to any coaches or even clinicians out there that are looking to build a business around a product that they already really believe in.
As a brand new user, just being sold on the streamline of being able to put everything in a centralized location, anyone that is just fumbling with Google Sheets to Facebook messages, group messaging, text messaging.
For anybody that wants to be able to coach their clients, many times you use different tools and resources, and when you're trying to manage that, even on a Google Sheet or on regular technology, you're limited on duplicating the data over and over.
I think if I'm going to, recommend the app for anyone, it's going to be myself. If I want to take my business to the next level, so definitely looking to do that in the near future here. Everybody can really benefit from it. I use it in the rehab sphere, but I also utilize it in the training thing. You can do the same thing with nutrition, right? There's so many uses for it.
For everybody, coaches, clinicians, anyone that kind of works in the industry, chiros, PTs, trainers.
This is one simple solution that we can create to all of our users and all our clients.
So if you want to create a way to systematize your business so you can scale, I have not seen a better product for that.
So, all right. So we have the name for Macros First, but this wasn't like you're out in kind of near Silicon Valley, right? But you weren't like hey, I'm going to go raise money and I've got this great idea and we're going to go do this thing.
Yeah, I think when you said like where'd the name come from, I think the first thing I said was like reluctantly. And it wasn't, what I meant by that was it wasn't about the name. It was like, I had a good job. I work in tech. I worked in tech then. My background's, I work as a product manager, which is a really fun job. The role is to like figure out like what are we building and why, and then really lucky and excited to work with like engineers and designers to make it real. They're the folks that figure out how to build it, and I'm like, what are we building and why? And so I approached my own nutrition as like a product manager, taking stock of the tools available for me to do it. And the unique problem I had, which was I'm trying to construct meals around macro goals. Why is this so hard? And that's what led to like the construction of the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet I wasn't doing the like lean startup, like here's my MVP and I'm going to see how this lands in the market and quit my job and start a company. No, I was purely just trying to track on my own. And at the time, as I mentioned, I was doing this like branded diet. I put the spreadsheet out in the Facebook community of this diet, this group. And that was like my first and only viral moment on the internet. Like that spreadsheet went completely insane. It had like 800 likes, hundreds of comments, but tons of shares. And people, the feedback was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. Like this makes following the diet so easy. Where has this been? And so what I did is I put like a little link in the bottom of it. It's like, hey, maybe there's an idea here. Maybe this is worth turning into something, maybe an app. If you're interested to like keep in touch and help us test it and share feedback, drop your email. So we collected a couple hundred email addresses in that, which gave me some validation that like, yeah, I think this could be like a real app and not just like a helpful tool for this diet community. And then it was kind of funny, like very shortly thereafter, I was like kicked out and banned from the Facebook group. There was no company, not selling, not promoting anything. I think it was just like the brand of this diet was a little, I think, intimidated about like, at the time they sold Excel spreadsheets. The whole business, it was multi-million-dollar business selling downloadable Excel. So you like put in your bios and it gives you a meal plan. I think they were like a little stressed out about anything, whether it was our shared Google Doc or anything else getting in between the client and that kind of fragile, transaction, a spreadsheet,
right?
And another spreadsheet. So they're like, yeah, get out of here. But by that time, we collected these email addresses and were able to do some, the next step for me was I started screwing around with making wireframes, which are like little sketch prototypes of like what a UI could look like. Conducted some calls with we ran, I think, like about 30, 40 people through it. And that led to like the very first version of the app, which we put out in the App Store, which by the way, still was, this wasn't me looking for my entrepreneurial on-ramp. It was just, I work in tech. I enjoy the job, but I worked in like online advertising and, building tools for advertisers. It just wasn't where my heart was. I'm much more, if I could combine my like, professional skills with working in fitness, nutrition, wellness, like that's where I wanted to be. So it was sort of like it was a hobby. Right. I was a place where it was a playground for me to build tools that solved my problems, work in mobile app development, which was a lot of fun, and just, in a new surface. And that was the genesis. And it was really like an ultra flat line for the first 4 to 5 years of this. But it was, again, just having fun. I loved building stuff, solving little puzzles and working with like a community that's like near and dear to me. So it was just my side hobby for years, purely a hobby.
So were you just kind of working on it nights, weekends, off time, just kind of putzing here and there, no real timeline to really get stuff out there really quick, just kind of like
exactly
when you have time?
Yep. Purely nights and weekends. My co-founder was a guy I worked with in my day job, and he was actually like the engine manager on my team. So for both of us, it was just like a fun little thing that we were putting around on building and just enjoying building. And that continued for some years, about 4 years, until we had our first kind of like pop moment. And it's been, I'm not saying it's been hockey stick since then, but it kind of kicked us into a category of like, we had a serious number of users depending upon us. We needed to upgrade our customer support, ensure reliability, or really grow the feature set to sustain that. And that's when it kind of really started interfering with my day job. And and also got to the point where I was able to transition and focus
Right.
solely on macros first, which as I was saying was like always what I wanted to do. It's just more fun.
What was that first moment? Like, what was that first little pop? Can you attribute it to something?
Yeah, we partnered with a nutrition coaching platform. So this was years and years back, but we launched our like integration layer, what Coach Catalyst depends upon, what we use to power our relationship today, and we launched a partnership, and that kind of really started putting us into the coach community, and I think that's one of the things that really differentiates like our company and also like go-to-market marketing strategy from a lot of like other nutrition apps out there, meaning that like fundamentally we are a consumer app. We're in the app store,
right?
Whether I'm a client of a coach or just anybody, I can download and use it to track my nutrition. But as this like for the longest time, like little small two-person operation hobby type business, we didn't and still haven't ever run like paid user acquisition. And there was no way I was going to like be competing with, MyFitnessPal on like app store ranking or ads. So we fell into this wonderful relationship with coaches where we through like by virtue of our feature set and just accessibility, like the fact that when they, reach out or had an idea for a feature, they were talking to like the person who runs the company.
Right.
We were able to build a lot of trust and like goodwill. And then the coaches have really been essential to our kind of budding awareness. Like I think I'm good at building products. I'm terrible at marketing. so our coach community has just been instrumental in helping us have representation and a presence on like the social platforms. And as you know, like the coach's influence, it's not just confined to their clients. It's, many coaches are a real presence, right? On online or just in their community, whether it's at a gym or whatever. And so that halo effect of like goodwill and trust that the coach commands really, really rubbed off on us well. And that kind of kicked us off into this really kind of virtuous growth cycle of like working with, supporting, listening to coaches, and then continuing to build more partnerships with incredible coaching platforms like Coach Catalyst, which enables, that's like the technology layer that really adds additional substance to the coach relationship. And that's been a huge part of how we've grown is working with coaches.
So, kind of going back to the early days, you guys were funding this yourselves and just kind of like, or were you able to do it a little bit on the cheap because you had a co-founder that had the skills to develop? Were you able to?
Yeah, a little bit of both. My co-founder originally joined. He was he was basically working as a contractor. We didn't start out together like we're gonna co-found a company. I actually hired him for hourly, so I was just paying out of pocket for the first couple of years, but it wasn't huge expenses. It was a solo developer basically, and it was the work was all hourly according to like the new feature we were working on. It wasn't massive, but then once we reached sort of I wouldn't even say scale, but just a point where it was like we should work together. Let's make this a true equity partnership running this company. That's what we did, and then for years, it was mostly on the cheap, and out of pocket for me, nothing crazy. Again, I still had the day job, so that's what I was kind of like subsidized. I was self-funding this for a long time, and then we hit a break-even point about 3 years ago, where it's been fully self-sustained and bootstrapped since then. Which means we have not taken on any outside funding or really tried to.
That's awesome.
It's been really fun. It's great to have that freedom, as you know.
Right. You can just make decisions in the best interest of the product and not have to answer to basically getting a monetary return for people. Right. Because when you take on, go ahead.
Well, I'm really attracted to sustainable growth. Like it forces us to make like really hard decisions about what we're building and why, how is it working for the user, and is it like sustainable for us to like grow with it, as opposed to, if we took on a huge amount, venture money, like they're expecting ludicrous returns in a short period of time. And usually in a business like this, and imagine be similar for Coach Catalyst. It's just you're front loading a ton of growth with paid acquisition and hoping that tide, like you're able to ride the wave later. And often companies, when startups, when many don't, what happened, you front loaded all this demand generation and then it peters out. And that seemed like a completely insane way to grow. I'd rather, it just feels much more natural and comfortable for me to grow as a result of like earned product fit, like earned value that our customers are using and are recommending. I mean, especially since a lot of our growth is like coach and client referrals, like there's nothing more organic and like sustainable than that. So I love it. And it's kind of interesting too with the economic downturn and like all the, the belts are tightening in the VC community too. I mean, I think this like sustainable growth, profitability is now cool again.
It is crazy. It is crazy how the tech world went into this, like just raise money. Like the whole goal is not to build a great product, it's just to raise money. And then you just keep raising money and there's no concept of profitability. It's just like, you'll just go back for another round if you need more money and, and hoping that it then sells at some point and then everyone gets, their return and then some. But it's not like Main Street business where mom and pop on the corner need to actually like have a profitable business to pay the bills. And so they have to produce good products and have great service and all those kind of things that just come with running a good business.
And in my mindset, I'm more the mom and pop mindset of like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish your thought. We've got a little bit of a lag, so finish your thought.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I think my mindset's much more the mom and pop. Like, it makes me deeply uncomfortable to take on huge amounts of debt or like raise a ton of money without like the clear signals of like where we're going. And maybe, I think some years ago people would say, oh, that's just like small mindedness on, as a founder. But I think now it's like, that's safe. That's like, it's a responsible way to grow.
It follows basic business principles to an extent, right? Like you should be profitable, right? Like it's
like it follows the laws of physics. Yes. Reality.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, when we go back and look at version 1 of Macros First, what did when you pressed play in the App Store, what did Macros First look like?
Oh man. Can I share my screen in this? This is a podcast, so I guess people won't be able to see it anyway, but
just tell me a little bit about it, because most people's like first version that they put out to the world, when you look back at it, you're like, oh man, I can't believe that people actually trusted me.
Ours was hardcore in that direction. Okay. So as I mentioned, the early genesis of it was a spreadsheet. So it probably comes to no surprise that it didn't look too terribly different from a spreadsheet. The very first version was heavy duty Google material design circa 2017, 18. So this is like Google's framework of design language, a little different than Apple's human interface guidelines. It was a lot of rows and columns, and that's where all the inputs lived for like, okay, you can still select your food and say I'm trying to get 30 grams of carbs, and it would solve out the portion size. I'm looking at the screenshot now. There were about 4 colors. It's like white, dark blue, light blue, and black. So totally uninspired, totally brutalist. And really the craziest thing about the very first version was it truly was a meal prepping tool, meaning we had no notion of a calendar in the app. So what do people use nutrition trackers for? It's to like log your daily eating, right? So it was kind of funny. I mean, like when we shipped it, within like 20 minutes of hitting the app stores, we got like someone like, where can I log my daily eating? Because the feature set we had was all about just building meals. Right. And this was a huge mistake I made, is that, again, I'm coming from this like branded diet community that is all about meal prepping. So I made 2 assumptions. One that is that like people who are tracking their nutrition have a meal plan that they just need help like building, meals against to follow, which is utterly false, or at least like I'm maybe describing the 1% of the population. And 2 is like, I only listened to like that was those email addresses I collected to do that early idea validation. That's where they came from. So I kind of had like my blinders on and building the wrong thing. But needless to say, the very first feature we introduced was daily meal tracking. where of course you could log, for a given date, all the things you're eating. We still retain that like meal building capability, which is still well beloved and a huge part of it's actually like we're patent pending on that, because that really is the original idea of like why I even created the damn thing in the first place was, let me tell you, like, let me answer the question of what do I want to eat, not just what did I eat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still a huge part of the app. But yeah, we've brought way broadened to be more of like a full-fledged feature, meal tracking app with all the things one would expect. But yeah, the first version was it's intense. I'll send you a screenshot of it so you can I don't know, maybe in the show notes of like,
right.
Oh yeah, that looks terrible.
I mean, and that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, Coach Catalyst has a similar story where version 1 was just like, we look back at it and we're like, really, people actually like trusted us to continue to do stuff. But honestly, that's how most things start. You look at even like really big companies that we see now. If we go back to their first versions of stuff, even like their first versions of logos, it's like, like that's really what Twitter looked like on its first way, like its first go at it. And so, but like the thing is, you started, and I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in is like they don't actually get that first version out there, because the first version then allows you to build the second and the third and iterate from there. So for you, like how quickly did you realize, was it within like the first week that you're like, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction with this thing, we need to, change course?
I think we added the calendar like within a month of launching it. Again, we didn't feel like under the gun or super stressed about this because it was purely a hobby. It was like, hey, if I'm solving, this meal prepping problem for my meal preppers as a hobby want to like reach more people, let's go for it. But because it truly approached this thing, not with any idea that I would be working on it full time. It wasn't like, oh no, like red alerts, we've completely missed the mark on shipping. It was more like, we put a tool out that's cool and solves a problem, and we learned there's a much bigger problem. Let's skate towards that puck and work on it. That's what we did. It was like a totally positive, like fun failure. It wasn't like, we've staked the farm on the wrong thing. Well, it was also really cool to like, I like the idea and still do of balancing or creating a product that works for what I call proactive and reactive dieters, or, people who are coming in with a plan and just need a tool to help them execute against it. Like that would be a proactive dieter, basically a meal prepper. And then reactive in the sense where, as most people, you have your daily, allotment of nutrients and you're debiting against that throughout the day. And you just need a tracker to do that. Like, I think I like that. I think we handled both cases really well. And it's, I still have my meal prepping roots with me, and present in the product. So
I love that.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
One of the things I love most about Coach Catalyst.
There are lots of things I love about Coach Catalyst.
And the reason why I love Coach Catalyst is that
the accountability off the back of that
is simplicity.
The support is amazing.
It allows me to give so much of me to my clients.
It's the drip feeding of content.
I can schedule lessons for my clients in advance.
Game changer for freeing up time.
It gives me my time back.
It's so simple and so easy.
Hi, I'm Kane, the founder of Coach Catalyst, the #1 accountability and communication software on the market today. We help coaches just like you keep their clients accountable and scale their business beyond what they've ever been able to do before. So if that sounds like something you want, let's take a look at how we can help. So Coach Catalyst was built on the 4 C's of coaching. Those are content, communication, community, and consistency. So for content, you need to go beyond just workouts and deliver the whole experience for the client so they get the results they deserve. For communication, you need to own your communication. If you don't own the communication, you don't own the client. So make sure you stop texting clients and use a centralized platform. For communities, get off of Facebook groups and take ownership over your social group with Coach Catalyst communities. And for consistency, the foundation of all results for clients, we took the best-selling book Atomic Habits and built all these fundamentals right within our app that's going to guarantee to get your clients the best results possible. If you want to start using the 4 C's with your clients, content, connection, community, and consistency, make sure you run over to Coach Catalyst and start a free trial today.
And I mean, because you guys were so early, I mean, you weren't, like you said, like vesting the farm on this thing. You have the ability to change course. You don't have to like try and jam the idea into a square hole per se, right? Like you can adapt a little bit, and because it's kind of a side gig, it's a little bit more fun, and there's not as much maybe pressure and stakes on this thing being successful. Do you feel like that was maybe a benefit early on, where it was more just like, hey, we're having fun and we'll see where this thing goes, and there's not pressure to make this into a big business?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it was freedom, and yes, absolutely. And I still feel that. And I think one of the things that gives me the most joy in continuing to work on this today is how close and well represented like the customer voices, the coaches' voices in our roadmap and what we're building and why. Because we're not beholden to like some weird short-term growth target or something. We're still able to be crazy nimble and like really utterly change course. Recent example is like we shipped a feature about a week ago called Macro Math, which it lets you choose how you want to see calories displayed in the app. So prior to this change, us and just like every other single nutrition tracker out there, period, calories come from the nutrition label. So that was the data source, which if you're a hardcore macro person, sometimes leads to some confusion and consternation of like, why don't my macros match my calories? And there are plenty of good reasons for that: fiber content, nutrition label rounding, margin of error, and on and on and on. But we, from some coaches in particular, it was like this was a big thing they had to explain to their clients of like, you have your macro targets, but don't worry, macros first. Like, they're using the label, it's okay. But then in Coach Catalyst or other, when you set a goal, and same in our app, like you're doing the 4-4-9 rule,
right?
4 calories, 4 or 5 calories, 9 from fat. And so I was really reluctant actually to build this for some time, because I was like, fiber matters. Like it can over under, you can really inflate your calories. But this was one of like, listening to our coaches in particular and a couple of our integration platforms, like they really wanted this. So we added the option. So we're, actioning and listening to customer feedback is just like massive. And I love that, that autonomy and control and closeness we have to our customers to be able to like do that and respond quickly.
So how do you balance, and this is something we are challenged with at Coach Catalyst as well. And maybe this isn't a challenge for you, but we'll see. So how do you balance this? Like, I want this feature. I'm saying this. You have kind of a specific path you maybe want to go in with the product. Like, how do you balance like the customer feedback? Because like this idea of the customer is always right, like isn't always the case, because the customer can't always see the big picture. And the customer is an N equals 1, and you're trying to serve an N equals 50,000. And so like, how do you balance the squeaky wheel or a couple of squeaky wheels versus what might be best for the entire user base?
Yeah. So I go about it a couple ways. One is, we do have a meta strategy, like a high level roadmap or like, feature set, or even just kind of theme of capabilities that we do want to deliver. And it's like, it's on a strategic arc for the company. But I'm very flexible in like the path we take to get there. An analogy I like to use is like watering holes. Like if you're on a journey, like, you do need to make stops and steps along the way, right? Like whether it's rest stop or whatever, watering hole to get there. And what I try to do is like be aware, accept, and mindful of like those stops. And to make the metaphor like a little more real, like I evaluate those opportunities based on like how far do they take me off the path. Like if we're trying to get from A to B and like the watering hole's way over here, like that feature, it's either a distraction of resources or perhaps undermines, the actual direction. Maybe we won't do that one, but I'm always like evaluating and listening to like, what are the steps along the way that even if it's not a perfect straight line, still are like making progress and getting us there. So, this like macro math feature, it fit into our theme of giving users like our overall broad mission is to like give people confidence in their ability to track how they want to track. And so, we introduced this as an option, an optional setting that they could use or not. So it fit that. when it's enabled, it eliminates this doubt. Am I tracking right? I've hit my macros, but I'm like, my calories are wrong or off, don't match. Like that undermines confidence. So it was in that path. Like it passed those checks, and it wasn't a huge endeavor. Like it wasn't crazy resources to go off and build this. So that's like an example of, even though it's like, it's not exact, it wasn't part of like the roadmap, it passed those checks, and it was like an acceptable waypoint to, get there and fit into like our broader path. The others too, on a much more like tactical, like short term, the way we pursue software development is in sprints, where, in a predefined period of time for us, we ship every week. I try to reserve like space, time, engineering hours for things that are outside of our like hardcore committed roadmap items. So in a given sprint, maybe we'll do like 60-70% of the time working towards like big feature, ABC. But that means 30 to 40% is left free to either address bugs, technical debt, or these opportunistic little quality of life enhancements that we hear from the field. So kind of structure our like working order to create space and room for that. And then third strategy is that we've been increasingly much more deliberate and transparent around our roadmap and like incorporating user voice and shaping it. So we have a public facing roadmap at feedback.macros first, where our community is able to see all the ideas that other community members have submitted, vote on them, see their relative priority, and also what we're working on. And what we give back to the community is transparency around like moving things along, of explaining why we're going to do it and when we're going to do it, and also sometimes why we're not going to do it. And that like we've received recently some requests for like to build a workout tracking, and I wrote like this doesn't fit into, we want to remain focused on being the best nutrition tracker out there, and this is not core to that. So it creates this, I think, nice like truly two-way conversation between our community and like a well-organized, transparent way that really hardcore does inform the roadmap. That macro math feature again, like that was submitted on the board, had 40 some odd votes, and it was seeing the kind of the mass building behind it that I was like, you know what, let me take another look at this. Because prior to that, my approach, how I'd been handling this, was through education. We had a big blog post around explaining why nutrition labels and macros can diverge. And I thought that'd be sufficient, but it kept coming up. So the user voice kept creeping in. So those are kind of, I think, like three ways in which, kind of structure the team and resources and give permission to like not, to write a roadmap in pencil, as it were, as something that can be adjusted, erased, changed as opportunities present themselves.
I think that's a really good way to put it. A roadmap written in pencil. I like that.
Hey there, coaches. Are you ready to take your coaching game to the next level? Get ready for an unforgettable experience at the Super Coach Summit.
Join us at Reston, Virginia on August 24th and 25th.
Where top-tier coaches from the best in the industry will converge to share insights, strategies, and inspiration. And here's the best part. Lock in your spot with our super early bird tickets. Don't miss out on this limited time offer to save big and secure your seat among coaching's elite. Connect, learn, and grow alongside the best in the industry. Get your super early bird tickets now. Visit virtual.supercoachsummit.com for more information and to secure your spot today.
So Macros First wasn't exactly moving into a novel new space, right? There were definitely incumbents in this space, right? And most people know who the incumbents in the space are, whether or not they're good or not. They're just the first to market. And so many times with first to market becomes, that's the great thing about a new space. If you're first to market in the new space and there's enough users, you're probably going to get pretty big pretty quick. And it doesn't really matter what you do for a long period of time, just because you're first to market. So, I mean, you're obviously moving into this space that's already a developed space. And so you had the kind of macro, right? I can figure out how much I want to eat, right? Well, was that enough of a like unique identifier, or were there other areas that you were kind of focused on, like how do I carve out my place in this space?
I mean, I think if I entered this under the premise of I'm going to start a company, I don't think we would have done this. Like, because you're exactly right. Even back then, like 6-7 years ago, there were, and there still are. I mean, there were like 4 or 5. There's MyFitnessPal, the gorilla in the room, the inventor, the literal inventor of the category. And then there's like, there were like 3 or 4 kind of big players that are still there. And then like this huge long tail. And yeah, I mean, if I really was going about this as, as an investor,
right.
I don't think we would have ever done it, but that wasn't why we started. It was just for fun. It was to scratch an itch, a creativity itch, to do something in nutrition. And I'm so glad we did, because we've managed, I think, to sufficiently differentiate both in how we've gone to market and the community that we work with, and working with coaches as opposed to like ignoring, or in many cases, other companies like really competing with them with like algorithmic nutrition and things like this. Like we're not doing that. But then also just in a feature set that, is core to the macro tracking universe in a way that many of these apps like didn't. Like, I think that's been enough to, really differentiate us and have created like this, what is a viable and growing business. So I'm glad I didn't enter this thing as a business.
Well, it allowed you to play the long game, right? Versus having to get a short-term return. You were able to be like, hey, let's see what happens.
Yeah, because for those first 4 years, if I was treating this as a business, it was an abject failure, straight up. Like we were doing between $200 to like $350 a month in revenue for like the first 4 years. I mean, it was pretty much a flat line. Users were growing, but I mean, we're talking growth like this, not nothing that a company would be a failure that would shut down. But we didn't treat it that way. It was for fun, and hanging in there, it worked. And I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like that. I think I'm a stubborn person. Like I think there's an analogy I can do. So my sport, my hobby is I do weightlifting. I do Olympic style weightlifting, and I've done it for like 15-ish years. Yeah, so 16 something like that. And I've always been, I'm not good, I'm not bad, I'm right in the middle. But now I'm a master's, because all the serious senior people have retired, and so now I'm like, I would at the last nationals I would have been like 5th or 6th place. So close to podium, but up there. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lesson in here of like, if you're having fun, stick with it.
Right.
Like, because it is. There's definitely been payoff in this, and I'm still having fun.
And I mean that element of, and now you've been able to like basically take your focus, right, and from it being a side gig to being your gig. And so have you noticed a change in how you feel about it? Because sometimes when we take quote unquote hobbies and we make them into our quote unquote jobs, it like takes some of the fun out of it. So have you seen a change from that shift?
Sometimes I get highs and lows. I mean, the highs are really high, the lows are more low. And I guess that's the big difference. Like the highs were always high for me, even when it was a hobby, but the lows were like, didn't matter. Like it was like, it's too bad. I thought this would do better, or it's a bummer that we had an outage when, we had like 1,000 people using us a day. But now an outage at our scale is, I'll be sad for days. Yeah. So the lows are just like much more real. It's because it is the focus, but man, the highs are still high. Like I love building and shipping product. It's all of what we're doing is like little puzzles to create, easier macro, easier nutrition tracking experience, easier coach to client, interface working with folks like you. And that still gives me immense joy. But yeah, certainly. I mean, I mean, the lows really matter now. And so it does make it there's a little bit more stress, but I think like, one of the decisions, one of the things that really motivated me to take the plunge and quit my job and do this was like, I couldn't keep splitting my time. Like I felt like my brain was being ripped in half, trying to hold a day job and trying to do it good by our users and macros first at the scale we'd hit. And I couldn't do either well. And so it was like, all right, I can't be half in, half out any longer. I need to like really try this and see what we can accomplish. And so, because towards the end, I mean, I was not a happy, like before I had taken the plunge, I was just like wrecked all the time. I didn't feel like I was doing well at either of my jobs, and I couldn't be half in, half out. It wasn't fair to anybody. So, had to make the jump, and I'm glad I did. It's been just about a year of doing this full time, and it's been an awesome year, both in terms of our growth, users, revenue, partners, and the team. We're shipping faster than ever before, and I mean, I really, putting the focus on it's been a huge part of it. I think.
Can you attribute a lot of that to just now it's 100% of your focus? I mean, can you see a definite, hey, once I moved to this was my focus, like we went from this to like.
I think so. Yeah. One of the big changes, just the proactive, trying to spread the word. I mean, I still like, we've always, I think, had great velocity in the rate of shipping, like what we ship and introducing novel features. But me focusing, like the biggest change I think has been, I guess what in a word would be marketing, like me speaking more. I mean, reaching out to you guys and Kane, that's been a big part of, I think, the change. Like we've had just more of like a presence where before, as you can imagine, like I'd spend my day doing day job and the nights and weekends was truly like tinkering on features. Yeah. And, the features led to like upward growth, but not this level. And it's kind of annoying because like I still marketing. I don't enjoy marketing. I like building. I like problem solving. And it's still, I think, our greatest weakness. But even like, so I guess it's kind of, it's always been encouraging to me that in spite of us being bad marketers, like even me we're still growing, even when it's me doing marketing. So that's also been a little like, all right, cool. Like, feeling like we're on the right path.
Well, I think when the product is done well and the product serves an actual need, there's less of a need for marketing. Like the product in a way sells itself, and then it's just more of an awareness thing. Like we just more people need to know about this. I don't need to convince more people to use it. It's just like, it's not well enough. It's not known well enough yet in the space of people thinking about it.
Yeah. At least that's what I tell myself.
Hey, it works. So, I mean, you've sufficiently now gotten to a point where, hey, this is a real thing, and we're starting to like carve out some slices in this world, right? Like you've decided to compete against the incumbents in this space. And so, how do you feel like? What's your unique advantage then moving forward, and how are you going to win in that space?
Yeah, well, I think I still see, like, my meta observation is that like a lot of our competitors seem fairly like set in their UI, in their like features. It's a lot of like a lot of the features I see are sort of iterating in the margins of like what is a very established like pattern of feature, of design, of capability. And I think like we are still doing like big moves. I think we have a lot of, part of this is that there's still some like core feature set that we just don't have. So it's really cool. I think we have a lot of freedom like to pursue it and solve the problem in a very novel new way. But I think I feel like a lot of my approach is we're just like more open-minded. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand why this macro math thing, like we're the first ones to do it. And this has been a forever problem of like the hardcore macro tracker person who tracks macros of like calories different. Like it's something you always have to explain. or even just like, again, that the original genesis of the app, like, let me tell you how much I want to eat, not don't ask me how much I did eat. Like, we're still doing things very novel and differentiated, and like in taking a new path. And the other way too is I think like we really love and embrace our partners, whether it's our technology partners or the coaches that use and recommend us. And that's like a huge part of our community that we like deeply engage, whether it's in our Facebook group or like as active beta testers helping to shape the product. Those I think have been two huge parts. And unlike the first part of like crazy features, like there's some really exciting stuff we're kicking around like natural language processing and bringing in some like large language models for food suggestions and design and just things that, you don't really see so much in other apps at this time. So, and I think certainly like even, we're still, I mean, comparatively, we're still one of the smaller tracking apps out there, but we're continuing to like, I mean, every week there's we get a bunch of posts like, I just quit my MyFitnessPal for Macros First, and I'm so glad I did. Or like a coach, like I'm moving all my clients over. Like this is constantly still happening. And if we're able to like continue to chip away and win over from the gorilla, like it just gives me and the team like huge confidence that, we're continuing on the right path. And it's also what's cool too is like I think nutrition track that it's weird. This is just a quick aside. I think in nutrition tracking, on the one hand, like the switching costs are super low. I mean, right? Like you download an app in the App Store and you can move over and go. But for people who have been doing this for a long time, it's fairly high. With you have already created tons of recipes or saved meals, or God forbid you break your tracking streak in another app. Like so that also like I view that as a really it forces us to set a high bar on like what you get in Macros First. Like what's the value we offer, both for free and at a paid tier, to like convince people to make that change. And I really embrace that challenge. And that's also, I mean, it kind of fuels us like to build really cool novel stuff. Right. A barcode scanner, or like we don't have the food database that MyFitnessPal has, but there's some great reasons for that. So what we did was like we built a nutrition label scanner. So when you scan that barcode and no food's found, just flip the label and boom, we extract the nutrients in under a second. So that was kind of fun, where we took this like perceived deficiency of like, oh yeah, we don't have all the barcode coverage, but we turned it into this really kind of magical, delightful experience for the user of like, whoa, like it just, I didn't have to type in anything. So it kind of took a weakness and made it a strength. And
how long did that feature take you to develop? Because that's it's not like you could just probably pull that technology off the shelf and be like, oh, I want the label scanner from Amazon. Now let's put that in. Or maybe there was.
Yeah. No, it's we took some building blocks. We're using like Google's machine learning kit. It's Apple's calls theirs Apple Vision. So it's like a framework, a series of APIs, and that Google has published and puts out. So that's like the raw ingredients that we use for scanning the text, doing OCR. Like so, it's reading text, and that's kind of an out of the box Google thing. But what we did was added a ton of rules on top of it to like recognize, first detect calories, then space, the unit, and adjusting it to work in all sorts of weird different label formats and Canadian rules, and we're almost done with the EU rules now. So that took longer than I'd like, probably close to like 3 months of before we released it in publicly. But yeah, it was cool. What was neat too was Google has a case study. This is actually on like Google ML Kit's website. There's a case study from another nutrition tracking app of like, look what you can do with us. And I've like heads up tested us against us and the case study app, and like we're faster and more accurate by like pretty significant margins. So I'm trying to figure out how to get with Google, like, or at least the one part, like how can we change how can we be the case study? But yeah.
Well, if anybody listening has a connection to the Google developer department, like put in a good word.
Let me know.
No, I like that. I mean, one other unique thing about you guys early on, right? So you had a free you have a free version and a paid version, very similar model to many of the players in the space. But your free version doesn't have ads, and I think you're the only one that I know of. Maybe you know a few others, but that was obviously a conscious decision because ads can be like. That's how you monetize the free users, right? And if you're not doing any ads for your free users, it's actually costing you probably money having someone as a free user.
It is. And for the longest time, like, I mean, that was like the hobby mentality. It didn't matter. Like our scale was such that, the incremental, my out of the pocket funding the business was in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands per month. So it didn't really matter. It was still worth it. The fun, the hobby enjoyment I was getting out of it. I also felt and still feel that there is a level of like feature completedness that we need to achieve before, any ads can really enter the picture. Like I want the quality of the app to be so high that, if and when ads ever enter on the free level, that it's accepted. Because there's so much value that's being given away, not given away, but is available at the free tier that it feels like a fair exchange. And you're right too, because one of the things that has changed is that at least you're right about the cost of free users. Because as we've scaled, our infrastructure expenses are no longer in the hundreds per month. They're significantly larger. So it is. I mean, it is something that we're looking at, kind of the whole pricing and packaging of free and premium and what's available at each. I am still super proud that like our free level has no joke about like 10 things in it that MyFitnessPal charges for and many other apps charge for. I mean, again, just going back, in most apps, like macros are an add-on, whether we're talking about reporting or goal setting or measuring things in grams. And for us, they're first. So just right there, like, for those who care about macros, like they're free and they're from the forefront. But as we grow, ads are something like we are exploring. And because things have changed since the hobbies. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm confident you'll do it. I'm confident you'll do it in an elegant way. I just like, there's so many apps out there. And it's like they really didn't actually look at their app and they just like slapped the ad like right in the middle of the screen, like right where your eyes are going to be. Like, I get it. Like you want eyeballs on it, and it probably gets more clicks if it's in the middle of the screen, probably because people are accidentally clicking on it rather than because they're trying to do stuff. And so like you obviously have to find a way to monetize free to an extent because it's costing you money, but doing it in an elegant way that doesn't necessarily detract from the user experience, I think is more of an art.
Totally. It needs to be done thoughtfully. And I think there's avenues too on the, like, as with respect to design and aesthetics and how, I mean, MyFitnessPal is incredibly aggressive about these like full screen, non-skippable video takeovers. And there's ways to be thoughtful about it. And I think, part of what we're going to look at too is our pricing and packaging and see, like, right now we're free and not free. And I'm wondering if there's like, I'm exploring other parts of the tiering structure that could be sort of like a middle ground that's in between like the full ultra unlimited, premium feature set. So we'll see. I mean, it's something I'm toying with, and because we've reached the size where we kind of have to do something about this.
I mean, we're starting to see big players, right? Netflix, like all these subscriptions where they have free with ads kind of thing, and then they have like an ad-free version and like a premium version. Like they're starting to have like 3 tiers through it, and so at least the consumer is maybe becoming a little bit more comfortable with that type of strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think I've held the line on no ads for so long because to me, ads are always a degradation of quality, even if done extremely well and thoughtfully. So my internal calculus has been, we need to be so good that when the ads do enter, like that degradation is still leaps and bounds above, everyone else. that's kind of how I'm thinking about like when we'll be ready for ads, and it's not yet. There's several things that I want to get out, built, and shipped before ads are part of the picture.
Because I mean, as of like today, right, early 2024. I mean, for your paid version is what? How much a month?
It's $79.99 a month. So I guess that'd be on the monthly. It's $11.99 or $666.
Right.
So $11.99 if monthly, and then $666 if annually.
Because I mean, one thing, the world that you're playing in, right, is you are in a volume world, right? When we're selling a $10 a month, $12 a month product, right, you need a certain level of volume in order to make this thing work. And like, you're playing in technology, you're not playing in ebook sales. And so like, there's a level of just infrastructure that needs to be upheld every single month to make this thing viable, right? And like technology, we kind of thought about this early on at Coach Catalyst. We were very naive. We're like, hey, we're just going to build this thing, and then it's just going to kind of live there, right? And then it's going to be good. But it's not like you build the thing, and sometimes it even just gets more expensive to even maintain the thing because things change, UI changes.
Yeah, like
it's kind of a never-ending process if you want to continue to be competitive in the long term.
Yeah. No, it totally is. It's not, and it's not just a linear thing too. Like I kind of touched on this, but as we've grown, it's not just we have more users using us, but like sort of the importance of uptime, the importance, like we have coaches, like we have, technology partners like you that count on us. So it's not the fact that like we have, like 15x our users from like some of the early days to now. It's not just like, okay, we spend 15x more. It's like, we've invested much more heavily in our infrastructure, reliability, redundancies, reporting, analysis. Like these are all tools to ensure that we can keep like the lights on and in a performant way, because like we know that people just need us more than than before we had coaches, before we had partners. Like that's part of, I think, upholding the community trust. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. It's like on the one, there is a degree of linearity of like, okay, we need more compute, but there's also a heck of a lot more, tools and protections that we've invested in to do it better. I mean, the food database is one example too. For a long time, we were using an okay data set, and then we made a serious, significant investment in upgrading that to better, better address what, meet expectations of what our community needed and fuel additional growth into international markets. But yeah, I wish infrastructure didn't creep that much, because we do run a pretty tight, efficient ship. We're not, I mean, we're bootstrapped, so we have to be really judicious about where we're spending, but this stuff adds up.
Yeah, it's a fascinating world. And so does that stuff stress you out, or do you kind of see it as like a challenge and excited about the challenge?
Kind of in between. I mean, I'm not excited about like infrastructure costs or investing in like, reporting and alarm system tools to like make sure that things are working. But there have been a few times like there's a little bit like feather in the cap kind of stuff going on where like there've been a few outages where we detect it was upstream of us, and we like detected it well before like the upstream partner did, and we were able to notify them like, hey, you're down. So it was kind of cool to see like our like comparatively smaller operation, like all of our systems are monitoring, we're like working really well. And I think probably for my co-founder, who's like the CTO, more on the tech side, I think that this is not an annoyance, but a more exciting challenge. Like the challenge of scale and scaling efficiently is, I think for the right kind of engineer, super exciting technical challenge to work on and focus on. My heart's always been much more like features and growing with the community. So I get less excited about that, but
my favorite part of the event is...
Favorite part of the event was the networking and the community. It was fabulous.
The energy and the quality of the speakers and information.
So I'd say like the highlight of the event, obviously the speakers have been amazing, but the networking has been great.
The community here, the people, and just those lunches and dinners and hallway conversations, and the presentations have had a big impact in terms of things that inspire me and inform me. So a lot of good things.
The coolest thing about the Coach Catalyst event that I've experienced is one, like Kane, Trevor, and Coach Cap, the energy in the room, the videos, like that stuff matters as far as throughout the day when you start getting tired. People don't realize it.
I would say the best part of the event so far has been the connectivity between the people that are here. It's been comfortable and it has felt very pressure-free.
I like the eclectic lineup, which is different than most other conferences. There usually is like a theme, and this is pretty spread out, which I appreciate. So there's a lot of people bringing a lot of different methods and modalities to the table.
Coach Cal was probably my favorite talk. His energy, the way he speaks, the way he holds himself. I love anything to do with athletes and sport, and if I can take those principles and apply them to business like Coach Cab does, it's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, you guys have definitely taken, and we talked about this earlier in the episode, kind of your unique approach to marketing. Really, like most the MyFitnessPals of the world, like, and all of them are going directly to consumers. So they're trying to, go directly to the person that wants to track. Where you guys are kind of like, yeah, we'll get some of those people, and you're going to naturally get those through referrals or people talking about it. But you're more going to like the person that is maybe educating their people about macro tracking. And so you kind of actually cast a little bit of a wider net, and you don't have to spend so much on quote unquote paid advertising because they're taking you to the right people. Like the coaches are teaching their clients about macros, or they wouldn't be talking to you, right? And so, and you guys have done some things to help incentivize coaches and kind of help them spread the word. And is that a strategy that you guys continue to like let's keep rolling with this?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's efficient. It feels sincere. Like there's trust. Like the coach isn't doing this out of the goodness of their heart. Like we're meeting a need for them. I cherish the relationship. I learn a lot and enjoy building for the coach because it does push us in some like unique positions, like that macro math thing again. Like that came from our coaches. Yeah, it's definitely a strategy I intend to pursue. I think if and when the budget allows it, I'm not opposed to certainly like direct paid acquisition or more direct advertising towards end users, but I can never imagine a world in which we don't need coaches anymore or don't want coaches. Absolutely not. I think it's a huge strength of ours, right? And I'm utterly grateful for the thousands of coaches that like were truly privileged to, support and earn their trust and how they run their business, being that like critical part of how nutrition data gets to them.
Right.
And the same goes for our technology partners like Coach Catalyst.
Right. And I mean, so like in transparency, like I can literally ping Jacob at any time if we have an issue. Like he's in our Slack channels and that kind of stuff. And one of the reasons why we cherish that partnership, because this is technology. Things are going to go wrong and something's going to happen. But what I've found and learned over the years is if we could be transparent about it and if we can fix things quickly, or at least keep the user up to date on what's going on, like you can typically leave that situation feeling good, or the client leaves the situation feeling good about it, because things will go wrong. I think it's how you react to the things that go wrong is really where the magic is. And so
showing face matters.
Right.
And like you mentioned the bidirectional syncing, like that's a super cool feature between Coach Catalyst and Macros First. Like that's another one that came from us talking. Like we knew, that like, okay, coach sets a new target, client logs into Coach Catalyst, sees it. First thing they do, or, hopefully they like go into their favorite tracking app and click profile and edit and update the goal. But just by virtue of us talking and like listening to, again, just problem discovery, it's like, that should be a bidirectional sync. Should not force the client to do any manual data entry. And that's one of our guiding principles too. That's where like, that's in line with the nutrition label scanner. That's in line with the whole freaking like calculate my serving size and the macro goal. I want to eliminate the friction with nutrition tracking. And it's just, these ideas can come from anywhere, and absolutely like us working together, there's many. And I know, we've been talking about a couple other like interesting upgrades to our integration to continue to make things tighter, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you said it well there, just removing friction within the process, right? Like it just kind of makes sense. If as a coach, I update something somewhere, it should just update for that client where they're tracking. And we've had people ask us like, hey, when are you guys going to do a macro builder? We're like, never, because you know what? We would rather partner with people that are doing an incredible job and their core focus is on doing that, because ultimately the client is then going to have the best experience. Because if we were to build it, we're going to spend the next 5 years kind of fumbling to get this thing right. And that means probably 5 years of suboptimal experience for the people that are using it, versus we can just say, hey, we're going to play really well with another company. We don't feel there's competitiveness there. We actually feel like there's a synergy there. And honestly, in today's day and age, like people use multiple apps. Like trying to get everything into a single application, I think is a recipe for a mediocre product. And so, like, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like, that's just kind of how we think about it, Coach Catalyst.
No, I completely agree. I don't understand this urge that some have to like, we need the Uber app that has my personal training in it, workout tracking, sleep habit. Like, no, like what you should embrace, I think, is integrations. Like you should be able to pull in data. Like I think it's wonderful that when a client can BYOT, bring their own tracker. I hope it's us, but like it would seem to me to be such a weird artificial barrier for a nutrition coach to put up. That's like, you can work with me if you switch from XYZ and walk away from all your recipes and what, I don't understand that. I think integrations are key. And it's part of our strategy. That's why our integration API is like so robust, easy to work with, evolving. And why, like I said on our roadmap too, I said like we will not be building a workout tracker, because I think core competencies matter, and they let you build a better product. So the name of the game for us, eliminating friction. Whether it's like why don't my calories add up? I've talked about that ad nauseum, but like the alcohol, convert calories from alcohol to macros, so you don't have to do the math. Solving serving sizes, so you don't have to do the math. Like it lets us focus on creating like a best in class experience in our niche. It lets us have focus, and it lets you have focus. And I think people benefit with better products. And if things play nicely together, I'll try to be unbiased, but like if I'm tracking my nutrition, like I would much rather switch apps than like, be in some all-in-one shop that has terrible food database coverage in my area, or is just ugly, or doesn't have robust reporting, or, what you name it. I mean, I would much rather my coach gives me the freedom, flexibility to track where I want to track, consume my data. And God bless if we're able to make it that extra sync of eliminating the back and forth where, the data flows in on time, in real time. The coach is able to communicate back with new goals, like even better yet. But yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me. So I recently did a podcast with Joel Jameson, who has Morpheus, and it's basically a training app. And so it takes in data from Aura and Garmin and Fitbit and sleep data and HRV data and starts to collect it, and then basically helps you then create a better training plan. And so this idea of like, how do we get all this stuff to talk together to ultimately help the end user be successful in their goal, rather than, like you said, being kind of the Uber of everything and trying to do it all. Because the companies that I've seen and do it, even the ones that are well funded, like you're kind of mediocre at most everything because you don't necessarily have a core competency. And it's kind of like, and then you don't spend enough time going deep with users on this like really narrow path and get to something that's really special. It's all kind of just like, meh, it's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. It froze a little bit, but yeah, there's virtue in focusing, and I don't know, just personally as a user, the value prop of you don't have to switch apps. I would switch apps all day if it means like not sweeping under the rug, pretty significant usability issues. Like, yeah.
One of my biggest takeaway is
The takeaway is
The biggest takeaways is
The one specific takeaway.
Biggest takeaway for me was probably content, showing up more online with more of my personality, more education, growing my personal brand as well as my company's brand.
Making sure that you're marketing to the right people, not just trying to be everything to all people.
Is the social media marketing aspect. How do you go about creating content not only for your audience, but also for an audience that you don't have yet?
is how passionate everybody is and how everybody is willing to help in this industry. They made me realize that I can also be there. I can be in that space. It's not that hard.
is to reach out to many people I met here and talk to them, because the wealth of knowledge is so fantastic that it's just really exciting to be able to have these contacts to be able to talk to.
Something that rang in my head as the day went on was letting everyone you know how well you know them.
This event could change the trajectory of our whole business the next 12 months, definitely the next 90 days. So that alone is worth coming.
You have to own the communication with your client. So making sure that you're their go-to reference and then building a network.
is how do you help your clients continue to stay uncomfortable and grow?
So
And with the technology nowadays, to switch apps is literally like click, open a new one, click, open a new one, or swipe up, open a new one. Like it's really easy to do. So no, I love it.
totally.
Any major, like, what's the next big thing for macros first? Like, what's the next big feature you guys are thinking about right now? And this is early 2024, and when this airs, it'll be a few months later. But what's the thing you're thinking about right now?
Okay. So hopefully then by the time this airs, we should have a new reporting homepage in the app. So we've been investing pretty heavily in our like reporting and charting experiences throughout the app. So we'll have like your Mac, this we do have in the app already. It's just kind of hidden a little bit. The ability to do this nice like averages over time, look at your weight changes over time, including a trend line. So we'll be bundling all that into this new homepage experience, where you can also create custom charts. So any of the nutrients, any of the metrics we track in the app, you'll be able to build charting against those, view averages over time, and really cool too, build like these dual axis charts. So I'm just making it up, but if you wanted to look at like phosphorus against body weight, phosphorus intake, you could create a graph with that.
Right.
So that's exciting. Relatedly too, we will be onboarding about 60 additional nutrients. So phosphorus is a good example. We don't actually have phosphorus in app today right now, but we have the data, and so we're working on liberating it and building additional reporting experiences around the full suite of micros. So where you'll be able to set like minimum, maximum, and goals for each micro, and present that reporting in a really kind of elegant, friendly way. And additionally, really looking to make some interesting changes to kind of our goal object. So like we have like, daily goals, and you can do carb cycling, high low days, rest days, whatever. But I think we do it in a little bit of we could do this more elegantly. And so we're working on a change to the goal, where instead of like each goal being assigned to different days of the week, like it's kind of flipping that on the head, where you've got your week as the base object and different days can have different goals. I probably shouldn't even mention that on the podcast, because I think that's a very like esoteric, like inside baseball change that, but we're looking to redo the object to make it a little more elegant. The net for the user is that you would less, I think it's just a more intuitive way of managing goals. Whereas today you could have all these different ones that you assign to different days of the week. And instead you should just have your day of your week where you can make the assignments in the inverse. And then kind of in the medium distant future too, we're really excited, as I mentioned, to kind of play around with some of what we can do on being more helping suggest foods. And I think this is a really interesting problem space where, there are apps that are like really focused on meal planning and building meals for you. But I've yet to be wowed by any of them. Meaning like they're suggesting things that I don't, if it's like if 10 at night and I've got these macros left to help me figure out something to eat. And it's like, here's a 47, step, 2-hour prep time deep meal. Like, I think we can, do a much better job looking at like the historical foods that have been logged by the user to create something much more personal, understand also time constraints, and just do a better job of like recommending based on historical foods that have been eaten. That's an exciting one. And I think also too, related to goals, one that we're starting to play around with is bringing in or thinking about calories burned. So I would argue this is also one of the major, daily energy expenditure is one of the missing pieces of the macros first experience today. Now, this is sort of compensated for because of coaches, right? Like if you're working with a coach or you're updating your goal, filling out your macro calculator, you're effectively bringing in daily energy expenditure and adjusting accordingly. But I think there's more reporting that we should be able to offer in app around calories burned, whether that's, and this is a big if, like this is a huge like decision we're contemplating here. Like, should we think about wearables and importing calories burned from wearables, knowing full well that there's huge margin of error, like massive, up to 40% on some trackers? Or is this something that we could be a little bit more derived for the user, where like, okay, based on, how the scale is changing and the food that we know you're putting in your body based on, what you're logging, calculate daily energy expenditure that way and offer reporting. What's going to be interesting about this is I already know, because from our like feature request board is like, there's huge demand for like, let me just import my calories from Fitbit or my Apple Watch or whatever. Like that's my source of truth. Like, work with me on that, despite, the kind of data integrity challenges. And it kind of does also, that reminds me again of like the original decision on the macro math thing. Sorry, I keep coming back to that. I think it's just a recent feature super on my mind, but that's one too, where it was like, we're talking about source of truth for the data and which do we bring in? And I think on that one, we were able to really beautifully thread the needle of choice. You can use either or. And I'll tell you, like, so if folks have thoughts on this, I welcome the discussion in our Facebook group, but like, this is what I'm thinking about on energy expenditure. Is there a thoughtful way where we could offer the same optionality, without, overly complicating and, muddying the app? Because at the end of the day, I think there's real virtue in a nutrition tracker to really, explicitly support and consider energy expenditure, because that's the other side of the coin, right? Like, it's what you're burning from what you're logging that you're putting in. It's just a matter of like, how do we do that? And like, what are the data sources we should support? So that's my big noodler that I'm churning on now.
I like it, man. I like it. I'm excited. I'm excited with the future partnership that we're going to have with Macros First and Coach Catalyst, and what that's going to grow into over the next year as well. I know we've had some big ideas, and we'll see if we can bring some stuff to fruition, just ultimately to help coaches, help their clients be more successful, right?
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
So, I want to finish this thing up. We like to kind of have a little tradition around the podcast. We just ask some completely random questions, and so it'll be painless. I promise. So the first one: burrito, quesadilla, or taco?
Oh, burrito all day. Always burrito.
All right.
It's just
I
bigger. It's usually a little more protein balance. I find.
Right.
Quesadilla way too high on the fats, and tacos I need like the tortilla to like filling ratio is off.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sorry, maybe too much information.
I like the explanation. I appreciate the explanation. If you could live in any cartoon world for a week, what cartoon world would you live in? You have little kids now, so you might be kind of like biased based on what they're watching right now. But maybe there's a childhood cartoon that was a favorite of yours. But cartoon world you could live in for a week.
I'm just off the dome, like Rugrats, because there's such like a innocent like wonder, just no problems, just navigating the small world with your friends. Like there's just something like beautiful, like that seems very peaceful, very tranquil. As like now I'm a grown up dealing with like real world problems and our broader, I don't know, just being in a nice little cocoon seems very soothing. And the Rugrats world was pretty cool and whimsical.
I like that. I've not heard that one yet, but I would agree. That kind of brings me back to my childhood a little bit. So thank you for that. All right. And next question. If you could have dinner with anyone on the planet, past or present, or it could be a couple people, who do you break bread with?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I was on like a Teddy Roosevelt kick. Kind of recently read a bunch of his bios and a couple of his two, I think there's a wonderful it was like a 2-part bio series. He's just fascinating. He's just such a wild weirdo. Like and I don't know. So I think I'd want to hang out with Teddy Roosevelt. So the whole self-determination, nature conservation, also like bloodthirsty, kind of wacky, like Warhawk, like just a lot of interesting contradictions with him.
I love it, man. I love it. So if people wanted to find out a little bit more about Macros First, where are the best places to go outside of obviously the App Store to go download it?
Yeah. So, okay. Our Instagram is probably, that's where I'm like publishing the most. That's probably where we get the, if you want to just kind of follow what's new, what's happening. But if you want to engage in conversation, our Facebook group, it's a closed private community. There's a link to join in the app. So that's great where we're, it's fun. It's a cool little spot. And then Reddit, I want it to be more cool. So Facebook's already cool, but Reddit, we need to do some community development there. So you could help us do that by engaging there. And then of course I mentioned already like feedback.macrosfirst.com. That's our public roadmap. That's also another like great two-way spot, and that's linked to from the profile page in the app.
Cool. I love it, man. I love it. So we'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. And man, I'm excited for the future. And thank you for coming on and sharing this story. And again, excited to see what comes next.
Absolutely. And I guess also the Coach Catalyst Inner Circle. I'm there. So there have been plenty of Macros First kind of Q&As come up here every now and then, tech support, whatever. But I'm there. So if you want to just tag like anyone listening to this, you can. I'll be there. I'll be in your post, commenting, helping you out, whatever. So
I love it. I love it.
But,
I love it, man. Well, I appreciate for taking an hour out of your day to come on and hang. So thank you, man.
My pleasure, man. It's great seeing you, Trevor. I hope to see you guys. I'll see you soon. See you in Orlando.
Yeah, couple
Vegas.
Weeks. No, Vegas in a couple weeks.
Vegas first. I'll see you in Vegas, then Orlando. Yeah,
I like it.
Cool.
I like it.
All right.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time,